Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brand, joined with my regular co-host, James Rhodes, who looks like a man who's been vindicated after Mason Mount got his goal at the weekend. He's been sitting here pacing the floor, waiting for this opportunity. A stick a dagger in, a two brute. Mason Mount scored the weekend since we recorded last. We've had a 3-0 win in Bilbao, and of course, a 4-3 defeat at Brentford. Big week for United with the Europa League quarter final, of course, coming up. Lots to talk about in today's podcast. We cover, of course, whether Luis Campos will he or won't he. I know you've got some, I know you've seen you comment on it. Obviously, we'll talk about Amarim's team yesterday. We'll talk about some of the young players that played, and we'll talk about my mea culpa, my humiliating defeat in the argument over Brian and Puemo. I'm way too confident in my stupid opinions. I couldn't believe what I was reading them. Like, wait a minute, my own research is calling me an idiot. So anyway, I take the L. I take the L. Shit, forgot my microphone. I take the L, my friend. So I will concede defeat on that argument. I couldn't believe his stats.
They're really good, aren't they? They're quite incredible, actually, this season, especially.
Do you know what, James? Just quickly on that. When I was looking at his stats, I'm like, I cannot believe how ignorant I am about this football player. Like, and the things that I believe to be, true, to be self-evident, they were not. It's another reflection of the fact that I just don't watch football with the same intensity that I used to. But when I was reading the stats, one thing that really shocked me, he was 5'7", which
Yeah.
you didn't want physicality, but his goals to game ratio this season's been excellent. But we'll get to that later. First of all, mate, we will talk quickly about Bilbao, and we'll get to the Brentford game. But nobody could have predicted what happened in Bilbao.
No, I know, and it's such a funny United thing. It's kind of the story of our Europa season. We keep having these discussions like, oh, it's going to be tough. We're in shit form. We're losing every game in the Premier League. We're in 15th. And then you look at Europe and you go, but we're still the best team in the Europa League, and it keeps happening. No matter what, it just keeps happening. So United go into Bilbao, the best defense in Europe. That's what was the word. And at home, they've conceded. They haven't lost in all these games. They've conceded no more than one goal in 23 games. United walk in first 15 minutes. They look very shaky. They look a little intimidated. They look a little rough.
Mhm.
But one of the things I would say we've seen recently, and we've commented on this, is that they have a different level of ability to bounce back from struggling at certain points in a game. They seem to turn it around a little bit better. They seem to not bend but not break, and then they can still put the gas on as needed. So it goes from 15 minutes to suddenly in a blink of an eye they're up 3 goals. And it's not all on the red card because they scored
Mhm.
before it. The red card itself was a denial of a goal scoring
Yeah.
opportunity that should have been a tap in for Rasmus Højlund that he did
Mhm.
very well to gather. Um, and suddenly it's 3-0 and they're cruising and they're playing against a team with 10 men. Fortunately, we didn't see the same kind of collapse against the 10-man side as they did against Lyon a little bit ago and conceding
Mhm.
2 goals suddenly. But they were calm, they were composed, they kept everything as it should be. I thought it was a pretty impressive performance by the end of it overall. Um, they just keep running it, and it's one of these things that ties into all the discussion we've had about the Premier League, about physicality, about the needs in the market, and all that. Whenever they walk into Europe, and especially playing these teams in Spain now on two occasions, Sociedad and Bilbao, it looks like men against boys in the midfield, especially when you have like them kind of running over them physically. Hoyland looks much different. He looks like he's capable of fighting, of winning those battles, of winning those duels, of winning those wars against, in the one-on-ones. And it's the thing they struggle with a lot in the Premier League, but in Europe, it's very different. And
Yeah.
it's kind of the deciding factor at the end of the day.
In some sense, there's certain things I don't completely understand. Spanish teams have always been, more focused on technique and not as much physicality. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like Iniesta, Xavi, David Villa, Messi were physical monsters.
Sure.
they were playing against athletes, yet their
Mhm.
technique,
Yep.
Busquets, everything, these were not exactly physical monsters. They had Puyol, who was probably the one enforcer, but still that differential wasn't, that determinative. So I
Mhm.
don't, and I'm looking at physicality being something that's, you know, it's not a difficult thing to get right. I don't understand how you cannot have the correct physicality, the correct physical um, conditioning to play in your league. Like that, that doesn't seem to me like something that's that complicated to fix. I mean, how difficult is it to, bulk people up?
Yeah.
There's obviously a line because once you put on more weight, a bit more muscle, yeah, and you need more oxygen. It slows you down, and it usually comes at the expense of cardio. So you have to get it right. I mean, the physical differential between the Sandro Martinez and the Dama Traore is massive. But
Mm.
um, I don't know. That is something that I can't come to a conclusion on and be confident that yes, it's definitely this.
Mm.
But look, it's it's not United's fault that it's a red card for
Yeah.
pulling back a striker. But James, I know we all have, conspiracy theories and biases. That Rasmus Højlund penalty doesn't get given if it's Michael Oliver or Anthony Taylor. No way.
100%. Doesn't happen in Premier League.
Absolutely
Doesn't
no way.
happen.
Now think about how consequential that is in the
Mhm.
game. So you get a penalty, that would mean you don't get the penalty. You get the red card, that would mean you don't get the red card, right?
Yep.
You don't have the advantage that Anthony Taylor. I think it was when Hoyland's against Arsenal when it was an obvious penalty
Yeah.
and it wasn't given, and you almost felt, we'll get to the game yesterday, that he was determined to correct a few, that's not how we referee Manchester United, because
Mm.
this guy, I said this about Michael Oliver, if, you know, you come out the wrong end of some 50-50s, that's what you should expect. If you
Yeah.
are always coming out the wrong end of 50-50s, that is an obvious implicit bias, right?
Yep.
And United always come out the wrong end of, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
always. And so
Always. Yeah.
I said, it's so noticeable to me that United are refereed differently in
Mm.
Europe, are officiated differently. And two of the most traumatizing pictures in my memory are Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor going like this, with the a VAR check on something that they'll only give once in the season against
Yep.
Manchester United.
Yep.
And you feel like because the Premier League, especially when it against United, they focus on them so much, they turn them into celebrities, and then they start becoming in love with their image
Yeah.
of being a certain type of person. But I don't want to hear talk about a red card or referees with United's exceptional 3-0 win. And just one last thing. If we'd have said at the end of the podcast on Monday, the time we record next week, United will have won 3-0 away to Bilbao, but lost 4-3 to Brentford, would I have taken it? I'd bet your hand off for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is really interesting, that refereeing thing, because we were kind of commenting on it through the week, and because it's so consequential to how the game is. And when you look at the rounds that they've got through via basically fair officiating, and so many
Mm-hmm.
times in the past, United have struggled, especially against Spanish teams. And the one thing
Mm-hmm.
that always stood out to me was the refereeing in those games, because the different teams in different leagues play a different way. And the
Of course.
Spanish teams, even when they went down Bilbao, they tried to do a bit of what you usually face against them in Europe: a lot of diving, a lot of trying to buy cheap fouls, a lot
Yeah.
of trying to buy the red card on Maguire, at
The
that
referee
moment
was
a bit
exceptional.
later. And the ref did perfect. And
Amazing.
it feels like it's the difference, because in Sociedad we got the calls we should have, that could have turned the whole tide. Against Leon, we got the calls we should have, that could have completely changed everything. And the same against Bilbao. And when you don't get those calls, imagine, how much it affects the entire state, the entire way that the game goes. And the butterfly effect of these things is huge. It's just
Yeah.
so
Hugely
um
consequential.
it's massive. And it's like that, those are the things that we don't see, time and time again in the Premier
Mhm.
League for United. They're never on the right end of a lot of those calls. Even when we were talking about, Bournemouth the prior
Yeah,
week,
we were
right?
saying this.
There should have
There
been
was
a red
penalties.
early, and how much does that change the game? how much more time against 10 men, how much more
Maguire in the
time.
box against Bournemouth,
Yeah,
manhandled.
it changes the results. We never get those, but in Europe we are, and I think it speaks to the fact that maybe United, maybe physicality isn't 100% the issue, but maybe they're not allowed to play physical in the way that other teams are in England, but in Europe they are. You know what I mean? Like there's a different standard here. They go in hard for a tackle, it's a red. Someone else goes in hard for a tackle, it's nothing, and it changes the way you approach
Well,
the whole game. You know?
I feel like, when you're in this certain ecosystem, where you're just bombarded with information, a human being is going to feel enormous certain pressures to lean a certain
Mm,
way
yeah.
before they officiate. That's just human nature. So I'm not like making only people like Anthony Taylor or Michael Oliver know if they have a personal prejudice or biases against Manchester United. I definitely feel like if you look at the calls that they make that don't go in United's favor, that go against them, when I see one of those two lads refereeing, my heart, like, I get deflated. I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be an oracle to say there's going to be something happening in this game that is going to enrage you, that is not going to go for you, and there'll be something that goes against you. But
Yep.
whatever happens by the end of this game, we are going to be talking about these referees.
Yep.
And, there's certain things where you see bias that doesn't exist. But, James, at the end of the first half, Anthony Taylor blows the whistle when United get a corner, right?
Yes.
We'll move on from Bilbao. We'll get to Brentford. Um, the which is a really odd time to blow a whistle. It can happen,
Yeah.
but less than 10% of the times it happens. Okay.
Yep.
Then the second half,
Mm.
United score in injury time.
Yep. And there's a VAR check later too. Yep.
Yeah, which was totally unnecessary, by the way.
Yep. Yep.
And Brentford took 2 minutes,
Yep.
deliberately wasted the last 2 minutes on a free kick and a corner.
Yep.
Anthony Taylor, 17 seconds. United had the ball midfield. Boom, blows up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He pulled Garnacho back for something that only he saw. Right.
Yep.
Chido Obi as well. Right.
Yeah, the foul on Chido Obi, he was
Yeah.
through. That could have
I
been a
mean,
red.
I cannot understand how
Yeah.
you can watch that as an official. Your neurons fire as a referee, experienced, who's adjudicating this on neutrality, that's just looking for the offense, doesn't care who commits it, who doesn't. It's just, and then see a foul against Tito. What possibly could the kid have done?
Yeah, I know.
But James, United need to be more vocal about this. Klopp was,
Yeah.
and it helped them, and Amorim
Yeah.
needs to be more vocal about it.
Yeah, I know, and because it happens so often that in the Premier League we don't even think about it, but that Cheeto incident is as much a red as what we get in Europe. And if it was in Europe, I think we'd get a call there. They'd look at it on VAR and say, because they could look at it on VAR, it's a potential red card offense. Even though they called it the other way, it doesn't matter. They could VAR that. They could look at it at the incident as a potential red card and say, did we get it right? And
Yeah.
switch it. And they should have, because the player trips over air or dives or trips over his teammate, and they're calling it on us. But
But we
it
get a
is it
VAR
is
check for
mind-boggling.
Brentford. You know,
Yeah.
sorry, mate. Go ahead. Just
It's crazy. No, but it is mind-boggling, and it affects so much. And I don't want to make, I know we don't want to sit and make everything about the refereeing, but it's such like a contrast between where I feel like we walk into a game and it's fair and we do well, and I walk into a game and everything goes the other direction, and how much that swings these margins, because it's not like we're getting blown away, by the end of the day. I mean, it looked like it at one point against Brentford, but they came back and could have even, if the calls had gone a different way, could have got back in there. And we've seen it time and time again in close games, that it just how
well,
much it can swing things.
first of all, James, the Matez Delict thing,
Mm,
right? Now, legally, of course, Brentford are within the rights to play on.
yeah.
And, you can sort of understand it. Okay. That's fine. I can understand why Brentford did it. It was hugely important in the goal, right?
Yeah.
Really, it had a
It
major
was why
impact.
it happened. It wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But if that had happened in reverse, right, we would have martial
Oh, yeah.
law in the UK. We need to have an immediate investigation. Manchester United, this is who you are. This is disgraceful. This game should be replayed. How dare
Mm.
you? I mean, take a look at the pearl clutching over United getting the potential of going to the Champions League, and how all of a
Suddenly it's a
sudden it's
problem,
come
yeah.
to people's
Yeah.
attention after 10 years of this being a backdoor entry, and all of a sudden now they're perturbed by it. I wonder what that could be, right? And
Mm.
I still, this gives you an idea of how the psychopathy and how deranged they are. But
Yep.
I'm looking at this and like, if that had been United who'd have done that, right,
Mhm. Yep.
the reaction would have been, you know, you would have had Sky TV doing crime scene reenactments and everything. You'd have had crime dropping guillotines in people's heads. And all this is
Yep.
what he almost decapitated. You would have. I
Yep.
mean, the
He would
I
have.
know there's
Yep.
double standard, but that was consequential. Young Fredrickson, the back line, young kids. That's a
Mhm.
tough. That's a tough fixture, James.
It is, and look, look, it's not like I know they're not supposed to, but it's not like we haven't seen referees blow the whistle for non-head injuries when a player's down and they think it's going to be consequential to the way of the play is running and things like that. But yeah, I agreed regardless on just the narrative of things. But yeah, I mean, so it was a good win on against Bilbao and Brentford. It was tough. I mean, obviously, like we say, we young kids like Fredrickson, young kids like Amos. I think they had a really tough time in that game, playing against a team that's very direct,
Mhm.
playing against a team that, has been now in the Premier League a while. They know how to take advantage of those kinds of situations of attacking that side over and over with crosses in from that side over and over. And it was every goal came the same way, essentially. And it's a tough task.
Mhm.
And, it speaks to why obviously there can be at times a clamor. We've got all these kids under 21, throw every
Mhm.
single one of them in 6, 8, 10 kids. This guy will make it. This guy will make it. This guy. And it's not to say they won't make it as footballers. It's not to say they won't make it as United players because they had a bad game or because they got beat up that game. But it is a huge step from the
Mhm.
youth level to the pro level. It's a huge step from the youth level to the Premier League level. You're not even talking about, going from youth to, maybe like the bottom of Serie A or the bottom or the championship or something.
Yeah.
Going to there to the Premier League is massive. It's so big, it's so tough, and it's so unforgiving, when things aren't going your way. Um, and that's why they need time. It's kind of like Ruben Amorim said about Cheeto, right? He said
He
he
was
used his body a
naive.
bit naively, and you think about it and
Mm.
you think, here's a 17-year-old kid now who is used to being way bigger than everybody.
Yeah.
And now you're coming against Premier League center backs and you can't quite
Well,
move the same way. You don't win those
well,
battles just by being
well,
big,
think about this. Up until 18,
Yeah.
they're segregated,
Yeah.
right? By
Yeah.
age,
Yep.
so you're matching up physically and you're cognitively similar. Then you go into a program where there is no more segregation. You are now thrown in the deep end where I don't care how old you are, I don't care
Yeah.
what physical, you are now in the coliseum, the arena where it's sink or swim.
Yep.
It's not just really the ability gets you to clubs like United. You
Yeah.
have to be exceptional
Yeah.
footballer to get to that level. You're going to get found out at some level if you don't have the
Yeah.
talent. It's the mental aspect. When you go up through levels in football, the biggest thing that changes is speed.
Yeah.
And
Everything's
if
quicker.
in order to play at that speed, your technique has to be better. Everything. So then you go to the Premier League, the gap between, reserve team football, youth team football, and this is coming from players that I've asked about this, the gap is massive. The
Mhm.
mental aspect, fans on you, focus, everything's different. People, people want to interview you, they want pictures, there's your family's there. I mean, think about how nervous you would be as a young player in that environment. Like that is a lot. So young Fredrickson and Amas, I want to ask you about
Mm.
what if there was one thing that slightly concerns me about the kid is the size.
Yeah. Yeah. It is because a lot of what happened was simply down to the fact that he's just and look, he is small. I mean, he is small.
Mm,
The first goal comes off of him losing in the air. I don't think that's ever going to change. I'm not saying small players can't be good, but like Ahmad is very physical. He's small. He wins a lot of his battles, but you're not asking him to defend the back post. He's not going to do it well. He's probably never going to do that well,
Mm.
and so as a wing back, you want him high up the pitch. For Amas, it's a similar thing. If he's going to be successful, he's going to have to play, in a position and in states where he's high up the pitch. But even then, I don't, you don't see necessarily him win with his body in the way that Ahmad does too, which is a
Mm.
talent, it's a skill, and it's something that is hard to replicate with size. And it reflects on how we'll talk about Brian and Mbumo in a minute here too, because
Mhm.
it's a similar thing there. Because not every 5'7" player is the same at all. Not every small player is the same at all in how they use their body. That is my main concern with Amos, and that was, to be fair, the main concern with the club as well. Why he hadn't been playing for quite a long time was that, does he have the physical tools to step up? And it's not height.
Mm.
It's hard. It is hard to explain a little bit, right? Because you'll see small players who get bullied and small players who don't, and
Yeah.
there is a skill in that too,
I
but it
worry
is a
about
little
height
concerning.
matters when you're defending
Yeah,
to me.
yeah,
It
yeah,
matters less when you're attacking because you can be intricate and diminutive when
yep,
you attack and you cause defenders problems with your feet. They'll take you down. You'll score. I mean, you see Ahmad's goal, but in defense, I think it was Newcastle
mm,
that Char
yeah,
targeted young Ahmad and Lana Euro went over. And when
mm,
you're small, the physical side you can get. Technically, kid's good enough, I believe that. But
yeah,
when you're in defense, back post, and you're small, we all know the conversation we had about Lissandro Martinez, and he was able to deal with that height differential. With young Amaz, I feel like it's going to be a I read on Twitter someone saying that he should be loaned out next season,
mm,
and I sort of agree with that
yeah,
because I feel like until he completely develops physically, then if he plays at United and people start seeing he's small, they'll start targeting him. And then that's going to destroy the kid's confidence to develop. And that can be really detrimental. So I think he has to be able to develop in a place where he's not under that scrutiny. He's not going to get, destroyed every week for making
yeah.
mistakes. And he's allowed to physically develop, but he doesn't look to me like he's ready to be a left back in the Premier League.
I would tend to agree, and then you also have to factor in that you have Patrick Dorgu, who will likely be the starter next season there, and you have Diego Leon coming in this summer. And one of the things I will say, Diego Leon is a young player. Not
Mm,
obviously we don't have a ton on him. But one of the things about him that is well known is physically he's like supposed to be fairly monstrous in that respect. Very fast,
mm,
very strong, very big in that aspect. That's one of the things they really liked about him. So you're competing at that point, and it feels to me as though a loan out for someone like Amos to play a lot is
mm.
a natural step. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that needs to happen more with some of these young players, where if you have a question, they got to go on loan. That's how it kind of I see it. Like if you're just not even sure if they're going to make it or not yet, they got to go on loan. They got to play because you don't know what will happen unless they do. But playing,
Mm,
he's only getting minutes right now, because of the state we're in, because of the position we're in for the season, because of the points, because of the
mm.
that's probably not going to be the case next year,
Yeah.
and so you're not going to be getting a lot of minutes next year when you have Dallo healthy.
Yeah.
And even then, Dallo is unusually, unfit right now. Ahmad has just come back. When they're healthy, there's even less space on the sides for these players because Dorgu was, of course, playing on the right, even to accommodate that. And so you need minutes when you have a young player like this is who isn't sure. And I would say that for a lot of players, for Cheeto Obi, I probably wouldn't say the same, mostly because United are thinner there.
Mm,
And because they probably view him as a player who, you know, it's like you're going to make it at United or you're not, right? It's a little bit different. He's not
mm.
come here to potentially be sold. He's not come here. He came here to get to the first team. That was the pitch. Um, so he's going to make it or he isn't. And in that respect, it's a little more sink or swim. But yeah, I do think a loan would be necessary. Would probably be the best bet for Amos because maybe he will. Maybe it'll be fine. Maybe he'll develop. But week in and week out in the championship, I think would be a great place. It did wonders for Ahmad. To
Yeah.
go to Sunderland and have that experience. Absolute wonders for him.
It develops you. in so many competitive ways. I remember, excuse me, I'm sick today, so you probably hear it in my throat. Um, when I saw Mesbury in San Diego against Wrexham, in how they were clearly focused on
Mm,
targeting him physically,
yep.
and the way he was able to deal with the physicality, that was a consequence of playing in the championship for Birmingham. That championship grows you up. It's
Yeah.
very physical. It's a high level of football. It's intense. You have big crowds, you have pressure, you have focus, but not like a forensic focus. And
Yep.
it's miles ahead of anything they're dealing with. They're getting at, Premier League reserve level. This is an amazing. I mean, Liam Delap developed quite a bit at Hull, right? In fact,
Mhm.
they put him on the right, and that development in the championship is amazing because for young Amash, what he needs to survive in the Premier League, he learned in the Championship about the physical development, that competitiveness, and how
Yep.
to overcome your lack of height. He'll learn. Okay, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. How it's accommodate my my size, and I think that you don't want to do that at United. Because those
Yep.
mistakes will be focused ad infinitum. So I definitely feel like that would be really helpful for the kid. But Cheetah will
Yeah.
be, yeah. I mean, the problem for him, James, is it's an unforgiving position at United
Mhm.
to be a young kid. The charity wears off really fast.
Yep.
People are not so collegiate for so long, and you're not scoring goals. I was a bit surprised by how caustic that comment was about being naive. This is something that's becoming more and more a part of football parlance where we're getting used to managers being that direct.
Mhm.
I'm still a bit shocked because I grew up in an era where managers didn't say that.
They don't say anything. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Very rare. What did you think of that comment?
I mean, I understood it, and I think to a respect, it's kind of, it can be taken in a couple of ways, and I think it can be taken as, a statement of like they're young, like they're just young. There's things they have to learn. There's things they have to know. There's things they have to get, and you know, until that in that respect, it can be taken as a as a point of like it's just a learning thing. I mean, if you would take it the other way and say that Ruben Amorim can be a little bit naive in the press conferences too,
Mhm.
then I would say it's more like that, rather than any sort of intention to criticize. It's more of an honest commentary on how the young
Yeah,
players are inexperienced, and they are, and that's they had a tough game because of that.
yeah. I mean, it. Sometimes you also have to factor in that English is a tough language if you're
Yeah.
not a native English speaker, right? Like, there's a lot of words that I don't know if you see this Twitter account that, constantly mocks English spelling and pronunciations that make no sense, right? And you realize how complex it is. So sometimes the granularity of certain comments don't mean the same, across
Yeah.
cultures. So, but it is still, a bit arresting to me to see that type of I've seen it with Maresca do it. I've
Yeah.
seen other
Yeah.
managers do it. It's not, unique to Amarim. It's just something that's relatively new in this era. Naive is
Naive, I know naive has a bit of
naive.
negative connotations compared to like inexperience, like it's
But a
taken a bit
17-year-old should be
differently.
naive.
What's that?
A 17-year-old should be naive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
that's
Yeah.
we all were, right? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so those are the things you can't coach, right? Those are
Yep.
the things you
Yep.
learn, with experience that comes with games.
Yep.
I like the kids. I think he's talented. But Mason Mount scores from a position that I wanted Rasmus Højlund to be in.
Uh-huh. Again, yeah.
Or where we've talked about Højlund's movement. First thing I thought of when Mount deserved put the ball, I'm like, how many times have I seen that ball played and Rasmus Højlund in a different
Mm.
position? Mason Mount gambles, goes front post, center, gets and taps it in. Um, what the one
Yeah,
played from
I'm
Mason?
with
What did you think about that?
I'm with you on that because you look at it and it's if you watch the run, the thing he doesn't do is hesitate. And
Hmm.
that was, I think, this is where when we've talked about is Mason Mount a good player? these are the types of things that make sense that we wish we could see more of, because so often we just don't see it. But in that moment, it is exactly that. He doesn't hesitate. He sees Garnacho running down on that side, and he just goes full speed ahead. No thought about it. I'm not saying didn't think about it, but just doesn't hesitate. Makes the prediction: if that ball comes in, I need to be there. Essentially, that's the thought process that goes through that. You don't react and wait to see if the ball comes in. You're not hoping
Go
it
ahead,
comes in.
I'm grabbing a
That's
shit.
so good. You're not doing any of that kind of thing. You're just making sure if that ball comes in, I'm there, and that's my responsibility, and that's how I'm going to get a goal. We don't see that from Hoyland at this point, and so I think it is correct. It is something I'm just like, we still don't usually see that. He's usually waiting. It's a difference between reactivity and prediction, right? It's if you wait for that ball to come in, you're not going to get there before the defender, because then you're betting that you are going to react faster than the center back, the goalkeeper, and the other center back to get in front of it. It's 1 against 3 in a reaction time. If you're on the same wavelength, if you can predict a little bit better, if you know your teammate, all of that, you get there. And that's what Mount did. And to be very clear, it's
Keep
what we
dining out in this
want.
Mason Mount thing.
What's that?
You're gonna keep dining out in this Mason
No,
Mount
no,
thing.
no, not
Just
really,
not dagger into
because
me.
it's not just him. It's not just him. You look at the Europa League, right? No, like Ugarte scores against Lyon the same goal, right? The same goal. Um, he scored in the second leg against Lyon, coming in to the box, crashing the box, scoring. The first goal against Bilbao is the same. Maguire gets in there. Ugarte's ready to jump at the post. Casemiro's ready to jump at the back post, and they're ready for it. Like
Yeah.
they're looking for that, and they combine and make a goal. Now, to be fair, Hoyland is there for a cross, but for the second one, but it's not often enough that he's making that run where he's clearly open, and it's not a surprise him and Garnacho have combined for one goal in
Mm,
2 years. It's not an accident that
yeah.
happens. It is a lack of something, and you want it, and it's like if these other guys can do it, if Bruno can do it and make those runs, and to be fair to Mason Mount, the prior week he did it twice. He just missed both shots, but he got on the end of two of them. If you remember against Bournemouth, right? It was he got on the end of two of those and missed both. Bruno gets on the end of one, and it's like every week you're seeing players get on the end of those. Whether they score or not is a different discussion, but every week now we're seeing cutbacks, low crosses that players
Mm.
are getting to, except Rasmus Højlund.
By
Still,
the
he
way,
needs to get on more, and that's it's got to be something in that, right?
I just want to apologize to everyone for my sniffling on this stick. Just the last thing you want to hear. But I mean, to be fair, Holland did do that against
Yeah,
Bournemouth,
and he did.
and I have to say, James, I thought he played quite well in Bilbao.
He
Like
did.
I
It was
thought,
probably one of his better performances, yeah, we've
yeah,
seen in a
thought he
while.
had a
We
good
just
game.
need to see it more, like all the time,
Mm.
to show something to us.
So, and I thought he played well. I thought that when I was watching his performance in Bilbao, I was thinking, would he have played this well if that goal against Bournemouth hadn't have come?
Mm,
Like I don't know, we'll never know. But I know he took a lot of grief after the Bournemouth game for his post, but I think I said on last week's podcast, I really don't think it was that bad. And I feel for him and when you're not scoring as a goal scorer, like it just you doesn't matter how well you play if you're not playing, if you're not scoring goals. A striker would rather play crap and score
yeah, yeah, yeah,
than play well and not score. You know,
yeah.
but
Well, I would tend to agree, and and being totally fair, because it sounded a bit overly harsh. It's more on my comments are more on the measure of the whole season. That it's so clear everybody we can get those goals. We can attack the box like that, and a lot of players have that, and that's what he needs to make sure he adds on a more regular basis, as he has done recently. But output is important. I mean, you know, um, Garnacho, for example, would say as a player who ends up with a goal and an assist in this game. In between, I thought he was just okay, but a goal and an assist you can't shake your head at. And there's been a lot of games he's doing a lot, but not getting a goal and an assist, and you criticize it. So not you, but in general, you can criticize it when you just there's no final product. And football at the end of the day is a game of goals, and that final output, getting that goal, that ball across the line still is the most important thing for forwards to be able to do. And it's United are scoring now, I guess, at the right time. I mean, 6 goals in these 2 games. Between the last 4 games now, they've got, what is that? What does that make? That makes like 12 goals or something in 4 games. It's getting better, and that's the reason they're making it through Europe, is the ability to just get the ball over the line one way or another.
Let me ask you about Amorim. United could quite possibly finish 17th, James.
Yep.
That's an abomination. Now I'm gonna take a macro view on this. That's more of an abomination on Ineos, right? In my opinion. So they have to take responsibility. Now I accept that the major contributing factors to this predate Ineos. I get that, but this is the anatomy of failure. When they came in, what they promised, Ten Hag finishing 8th was unacceptable to them, as it should be. And
They kept him.
Well, I mean, I can almost forgive them for that, James, right? Because I can forgive you getting a decision wrong. They knew there was a potential this could be wrong, but it ends up being wrong, and you didn't make it 3 months earlier because you just didn't feel you were in possession of enough information to make an educated decision. I can forgive that, right? Because to me, if they'd have got it right, it would have been a guess, So it's not backed by much information. Anyway, when they came in, the recruitment in the summer, all these high standards, everything, bringing in your Amorim, this was not what was intended. Simon Stone tweeted out something, and I really don't understand why. It actually triggered a memory of me. He said, Manchester United can no longer mathematically qualify or finish in mid-table. It reminded me, James, years ago, I was in my backyard smoking weed, and I'd lost like the last little bud, right? I couldn't find it anywhere. It was dark. So it took me Apple iPhone. I was looking all over the grass for it, and I found it, right? So I was sitting there smoking for about 5-10 minutes. And this feels a bit weird. And then I used my light, and turned out it was rabbit shit. And right, and I looked at my friend, and I said, "Well, there goes my Mensa dream, because my last brain cell just deteriorated after smoking rabbit shit." So I really don't understand why Simon needed to point out that we're not going to finish mid-table. I don't think that was a realistic objective anyway,
Yeah, that is a hell of a comparison, I gotta say.
But that's what goes on in my brain.
That's the rabbit shit, I guess.
Yes, it's what my inner dialogue is like. Right. Yeah, that's
No.
to cut a long story short, which is a bit late for that, right? But I'm Marine.
Yeah. Well, look, I look at it in a few different angles here. Number one, as you pointed out previously, that I think is requisite. United don't have the squad to play in 2 competitions. That's the reality of the situation, right? And that has been an issue for a long time. We don't have the personnel for it. We don't have the team for it. We don't have the squad for it. Um, and that's a multi-year problem. Obviously, that's been there for a long time. As you said, when Jose Mourinho said it years ago, it's the same story, and that was what, 2018. 2017, even 8
Yeah,
years gone,
yeah,
that we don't have the team to do this. We have to focus on the Europa League. The Premier League's gotten stronger since then at the middle and at the bottom. It's even more competitive. You could practically, as one of the bigger sides, you could practically sleep into the top 8, a while ago. Not really anymore. It is definitely a little more competitive, which I think is a factor. I think it's a funny thing to say, but I honestly think that between 5th and 17th, there's very little difference between them. I mean that quite seriously. I think there's very little difference between 5th and 17th. Like I take Nottingham Forest, for example. I think they finished 17th last season. And now what, they're in 5th or 6th. there's a lot of transient. Obviously Tottenham are below United in the table as well in this discussion too, and also headed for a European final. In that respect, or at least maybe not quite as surely, as they have a tough away game, but it is difficult. But United don't have the squad for two competitions.
Yeah. You know,
Um,
you said something that's interesting. I want to give it credence. There's not, when you said it was, a bit surprising or raising eyebrows, not a lot of difference between fifth and 17th, but that's actually true.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you look at it, really, our Liverpool are significantly better than everyone else,
yes, yes.
but Arsenal have, to me,
Arsenal and
no
City are a
aura.
little below that, but
Yeah,
not.
Arsenal have no aura, right?
Yeah,
They lose at home to Bournemouth. I don't think, if United had done a couple of things right, build momentum, I'd be confident every time United played Arsenal. I don't think
yeah,
they're that great.
yeah,
City, not that impressive. Forest, not that. So there really isn't that much
yeah,
quality difference. There's obvious quality difference with the bottom three, but
yeah.
that's surprising, but I think it's correct.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of like, honestly, if we finished 8th, we finished 15th. I don't know that in that much difference, like that could be Ahmad healthy makes the difference between 15th and 9th, in quality, right? It's not that big, and that's how it feels, and it is a weird thing to say, and it does sound a bit of excusey, but when you look at the games we've gone through, you kind of go, Brentford 4-3. We played the kids. Could we win that with a full strength team if we had an actual squad to play? Probably. Bournemouth 1-1. Well, Arsenal just lost to them. At home. We could have won that one. I'm not. I don't want to go through the ifs and ands and things like that forever, obviously. But it's like I don't think the margins of the points have been so big that it's like
Well,
surmountable. If we'd had just a few more players and that were able to contribute, able to help and to take part.
one other thing, James, a couple of things. With the Brentford thing. So I didn't realize that the last time United had lost to Brentford in the Premier League, once again, plagiarism for talking the Devils. Thank you, lads. We'll give credit where it's due. Was that 4-0 Ten Hag one, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then I'm thinking about one thing that Amorim hasn't done. Remember, the 6-3 against City, the
yeah,
hammerings United were
yeah,
taking. So United, under Ten Hag at the peak, United were beating teams, outside the top six. They were winning. They couldn't win away against the top
yeah.
16.
Top
And,
8, yeah,
they
actually,
had
yeah,
the Liverpool
yeah,
result where we got murdered. Whatever, for Amorim and his sins, United have never looked in a game where they're completely.
yeah,
There's been times where I've watched United against City, and after 10 minutes, my arse is making buttons. I'm like, this is just going to be,
yeah,
and on, yeah, and this is going to be painful, right?
yeah,
And it's, I've never once felt that under. I've never felt that there's that there's this weakness in the team where they're just going to collapse. Whatever happens, if United lose, it'll not be a pattern. They'll
hmm,
be competitive in the game. And if I'm totally honest, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen improvement in United's team game, where they're
yeah,
scoring goals from build-ups,
yeah, yeah,
and we saw that yesterday. And again, an amazing start from talking to Devils. If you look at all the top 5 leagues across Europe, the under-20s, the only people statistically who were ahead of Alejandro Garnacho in terms of goals and assists are Lamine Yamal and Desiree Doué. You know,
hmm.
so and I'm Garnacho will almost certainly going to summer. So do you think that there's been some bright sparks too?
Yeah, there has, and I think I agree with you in general. It's always a hard discussion, on this point when you talk about like progress and things while you're still losing games, because I
Mhm.
really do think there's been improvement in the last month. Like completely objectively, I think they've improved as a team. I think in Europe you see it a little bit more, but you see it in, they're still mostly, they're there. And like you said, the batterings have changed. They're able to claw their way back. You know, they're able to put themselves in shape even when they get kind of beat up and stay in the game and it doesn't fall away in a way that we're used to. But yeah, I mean the other problem between 5th and 17th not having that much between them is it's very easy to fall all the way down, just as it might be a bit easy to crawl to get up the table, and I think that it wouldn't take that much for United to be back in 5th, 6th next season quite easily. It's just
Like
as easy to
Forest done,
be.
James. Well, this
Yeah.
why were Forest able to do it? Because
Yeah,
I
and
think
they
it's
only
your point because there's not that much of a
yeah.
difference.
And it
You
was
can
only
put a
like
few young players up
27
there.
million in players they bought. Like it wasn't like they went out and I mean it's Forest, right? It's not like they went out and bought these massive stars. They just built a team with an idea and they're well drilled to be fair. They do what they do very well, right? And with guys like Anthony Alanga, I mean it's not like these are star players. Chris Wood, like they're good, but they all fit the same
Which,
concept and squad planning, which we've never had. And that's a
by the
big
way, they
part of it
lost to
too.
Brentford in midweek before they played United. So Brentford went and beat Forest
Yeah,
away.
I
They
mean,
were the full
they're a
strength
good team.
team
They're a good
and
team.
4-3. And James, to me, the Brentford result, there was I you could see that a couple of goals that Shota scored were 100% as a result of the young kids United had in
Oh,
the back.
100%. Yeah.
They're bringing Fredrickson and off, and on comes another teenager, and Lenny
Yep.
Euro. Like there's no one
Yeah.
else. United's youngest lineup ever in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Like there has to be some acknowledgement for that, and
And the third youngest in Premier League history, right? Like it's not even just
yeah,
United. Like it was the third youngest ever for the Premier League. It's something.
um, Deer played. I've always wondered if John Murda bought Deer because someone was bollocking him over Deer, and I just got confused and bought a goalkeeper called Deer, which describes his tenure.
That was a
I'm
weird.
confident enough that Deer is not a Man United goalkeeper.
No, 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 no. That performance. Look, we've taken our shots on Onana, and rightly so.
Mm,
But when you sometimes see the alternative, you go,
mm,
I get it. Why Onana keeps his place. I
yeah,
get it why he's getting backed. I get it why he's been protected because uh, there's it is so weird. Keepers are so strange because Onana make mistakes, but I've never seen him look as out of control like that as I see on a lot of those saves, a lot of those attempted saves, a lot of those crosses, a lot of things like that where you're just like, where is this guy going? Like what on earth is he doing? And yeah, I think there's a fairly good chance that Bayender could move on in summer if Onana doesn't, and another young keeper brought in to compete. And I think it would be a very smart thing to do. But outside of that, Onana is quite obviously the first team keeper at this point.
the United's second goalkeeper, James, is an
Mm,
important position
yep.
because if you stick with Onana, there's a really decent probability you're going to be relied on,
Yeah.
and that's not a position you can just fill, in my opinion, with someone
Mm,
that is decent but not very good until you get a top class number one. You look at Liverpool. Liverpool have
yep.
Allison, and then they were bringing in Kevin Callagher, and very very good young keeper. He was able to stay. He stayed in their first team for months when Allison was injured, and now they've won the league. That position becomes
Mm,
important, and so I think for United, like they're going to. Tom Heaton, I mean, when Tom Heaton was getting his contract, I knew I saw people online being, getting a bit pissed off. I'm like, are you seriously getting pissed off for a third choice goalkeeper who'll probably never play? Getting I can't like why does that bother? What were you expecting and as an alternative? Oh,
yep.
United were going to buy Donnarumma a player, but
Yeah.
anyway, something that I believe that is very important to address over the summer. And when you talk about physicality for that position, that is in my opinion, with the physical contact in England, you have to be imposing.
Yep.
Courtois, all that they're big, they're imposing.
Mm, yeah.
Um, it's very very important. Uh, in heaven, so the last Amorim said he had a setback and he's not ready.
Yeah, so we have a few issues here because we didn't really discuss it, but of course, Matthias de Ligt also picks up an injury in
Yeah.
this game. That didn't look very good. I
Mhm.
thought it was a contact injury at first, so I wasn't too worried. But on the replay, you kind of watch his
Mm.
you definitely worried about the knee. As far as
Mhm.
I hear, they're quite worried about it, and
Yeah, they're worried about it for next season too.
he'll be having his scans and his checks this.
Sorry.
to see if it's unfortunately, as with Lissandro, yet another substantial ligament injury, that could be summer next season, all of that. Aiden Heaven could be back by the Europa final. I think that's essentially the word there. It'll probably be Lenny Yoro, Maguire, and Mazraoui at the back anyway. Come the Europa League final, which is okay. It's good. They're good players in all of their respects, but you got to keep them in bubble wrap until then too, because both Maguire and Yoro, of course, have faced time on the sidelines with injuries this season. They got to be
Jim,
careful with that, no doubt. But
how
it's big,
lucky are we to have Lenny Euro?
unbelievable,
One of the
unbelievable.
best compliments I can pay this kid is the fact that he's been playing consistently, and in three-quarters of the games, he's almost not noticed
Yep.
because he just doesn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
This kid, this maturity at this
Mm.
age, who's got the bollocks to stand up to you, he looks like a young cuddly kid, right? Quality, you know, has no problems putting one on you. He's not going to be intimidated. This young French kid, he's not you're going after Shar. You see how engaged he is, how involved he is with everything. He looks like he has
Mhm.
a really good relationship with Ahmad and everything. And I'm looking at this kid going, we this might be one of the most important signings United have made, because this we don't United lose these players. Real Madrid would get this player, Dortmund or something, and then when they reach their peak, United can never get them. I'm looking at
Mm.
this kid going, this kid is sensational. I mean, this
Yeah.
kid is so cool, so smooth. So in this United team, this is hard, and his comrade Harry Maguire.
Mm.
I'm a
What
quad
can you
man.
say?
Jesus Christ. Harry Maguire, this is a guy who had bomb threats at his house, James,
Mhm.
lost the captaincy, and took, you know, indefensible abuse. And now he's more of a captain than at any other time in the
Yep.
club. He shows up, he's a leader, he overcame all that abuse, he chips in with important goals, and in many ways, they embarrassed me. I put some negative stuff on that I'm embarrassed about. I can't speak highly enough of Big Maguire.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, those two, Maguire and Yoro, two of the players alongside, probably Bruno, that give me, the most confidence and are a big part of why in Europe we've been able to continue alongside Casemiro and others, to be fair. But Lenny Yoro, I think in Europe has probably been the best center back that I've seen in the competition. He's been flawless and so aggressive in every game. And Maguire, for the things he's done on the ball, his passing, his ability, his leadership, the way he brings calm, is definitely huge. And so they honestly, they're players that and it's crazy looking at them on opposite spectrums, right? A player who's been here a long time, and a player who's new and 19, that give you that kind of confidence at the back. But that's where you start when you want to win things. You know what I mean? That's where it starts. When you want to win things, you got to have the back, line be solid. You got to have confidence in them. You have to have leadership. That's always been fundamental to all of Fergie's teams as well. That one things was to have that confidence, that leadership, and that poise at the back. I think that's always important from the center backs too. So it's big. It's big that they're there, and it gives us a shot. Now, you're asking it with regards to injuries, but we do need a center back then this summer with these injuries that
Mm,
are piling up. We kind of have to.
yeah.
Um, I don't see a way around it. If we didn't have Lissandro's injury and we didn't have the Licks potential, we'll see what happens there. You might say that's enough. You've got Heaven, you've got Lissandro, you've got the Lick, you've got Maguire, you've got Yoro, you've got Mazraoui, but you're down three at maybe two for a long time,
Lindelof, Johnny Evans gonna
and
go.
Lindelof and Evans are on their way out. So you'd hope they'd sign somebody
You know,
for especially the left side position, or maybe the right,
yeah, they're
either
gonna
one.
have to.
Yeah,
Possibly Jonathan Tah, which
yeah,
would be an exceptional deal for United to do. 29 years of age, free transfer, available, and a lot of big clubs chasing them, and that would obviously help the fact there's
yeah,
no fee involved there. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of encouraging signs. We have a mad back that came back this week.
yes,
Came
scored
on
again.
against
Yeah,
Bilbao. And his cheeky little flick, man, I'm looking at him like, I'm now looking at a young player who isn't just having a confident streak. He now has the aura of a United player that knows he's
Mm,
exceptional. He has confidence. He has a bit of swagger. Comes on, scores again at the weekend. That is a huge plus.
massive, massive. And the fact that he's playing at the wing back too, I think is a big part of the performance because I know, the criticisms and the difficulty with United looking so defensive, so slow at times, but that we want to use players like Ahmad as a wing back, and to be able to then be more aggressive and that allows you to have more attackers, more threat, more players you can score goals on the pitch. So I'm excited to see that. Speaking of that, then what's your thoughts then now on the on go ahead, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say I don't want to lose it, forget because my brain, as I was saying earlier, Lindelof. I know everyone wants him gone, and he gets criticism, but what got overlooked, James, was his key, clearance in that Bilbao game where he never
Correct
really got the
too.
credit he deserved. So
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
want to give him a clap on that.
we gotta give praise because he had, I think, a rough first 15 alongside a few others, but he made a goal-saving block there, and for the rest of the game, he was pretty flawless. He actually did quite well in that game, and, you know, hey, I mean, look, you start and you play in a big European away game and you win, you deserve praise, and
Yeah.
he was a part of us winning and not going down 1-0 for sure. 100% he was a part of that and definitely deserves that. So
So yeah, sorry, no, go ahead.
on Mbumo then, and back to that. What do you think of the concept? Because one of the things that that we know United need more goals, and obviously Cunha looks like one they'll get done, but they've been talking about Delap, they've been talking about Mbumo. They obviously need at least two goal scorers to add to this team. And what are your thoughts on it now?
Well, I mean, look, I think Cunha is the obvious one that you needed to
Yeah,
me need to go for. I was surprised when I was looking at Embuemo. Um, and again, the first thing I thought of when I was reading it was that Shaq meme. I apologize, I wasn't familiar with your game. Um, I was surprised that his height being 5'7", it to be 5'7", score goals with the regularity that he has. I've got his stats here. I can't find, but I I think he has six. What he got? Pull it up, James. What's he? It's
yeah, 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 yeah.
his goal
He's got
scoring
18
record.
goals this season in the Premier
Yeah,
League.
18
18.
goals. Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and 6
So
assists to
I'm
go
10,
with it.
10 assists. I've got 16 goals, 10 assists. But we're always generous. We give them on an extra goal or an inch wherever we need to take it. It's a universal human right for all men to take an extra inch when and where we need it. Um, but yeah, no, he 30. I've got 35 goals, 35 games, 18 goals, 6 assists. Last season, 25 games, 9 goals, six assists.
Mm,
If you can do that playing for Brentford at 5'7", you can do it playing for United. It's a completely different option if you get hate. Cunha,
yeah.
I don't know what Cunha must be. I think
He's
he's about
not
six.
he's not particularly small. He's around 6 feet. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
not a
so
small player. Yeah,
yeah, so
6
given that
feet. Yeah,
United are putting an emphasis on physicality, that would surprise me if they're going to go with someone at 5'7". But not everyone needs to be 6 plus.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
so
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I think that there's Premier League players are going to cost more, but I think that if you have shown competence in the Premier League and score with regularity, that's worth something to me because
yes, yeah.
there's a
It's the
coming
same
in the
teams
Premier
you're
League.
playing against. It's like it's not going to change much how you go from one team to the next. You're not facing different competition. You're in a different environment, but you're playing 19 of the same teams every week. It's
Yeah,
I think that is worth it. What do you think about him versus Liam Delap? I know they're different players, but
yeah.
in that respect,
James, one of the things when I was reading this Embuemo stuff was I was embarrassed how ignorant I truly was about Embuemo. And it will be similar to Liam to that because I don't watch enough Ipswich games. But I was listening to James Schoolcroft talk about him on United We Stand podcast with Andy Mitten. James Schoolcroft used to play for Ipswich at watched quite a bit of him, and he rates him really, really highly. Believes he's ready. Liam Delap will probably have options though, and
yeah.
will he want to come to United? That's the big question. But again, a player that benefited immensely from playing in the Championship. I think that he is ready for that type of step up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that seems to be the going opinion on him. But obviously, he does have options, and I think United are still looking because they're not sure of getting Liam Delap at this point. I mean, Chelsea are in for a big. I want to ask you what just one more thing here at the end because it's something that's kind of come up today,
Oh,
and
I
it's
need my
not the
lawyer.
first time. Um, what's that? No, no,
Do I
no,
need
no.
my lawyer? This is
No,
maybe
no,
about
no, you'll be
literature.
okay. No, no, you'll be okay. This is not the first time this has come up, but very, very strong, like in the last hour, very, very strong reports from Saudi, from Al Hilal, I think it is, that they're talking with Miguel Pino, Bruno's agent,
Mm,
who's also his brother-in-law, about a potential move over there. And they're very, I mean, as far as we know, they're very, very strong sources reporting it based on the guys over there. I'd be absolutely shocked if Bruno goes anywhere this summer. I would be unbelievably shocked. The way he talks, the way Amarim has spoken about him, the way he's performed. He did get a new contract from Ineos last year. They did extend the deal and keep him as a part of being here for the long haul. I'm a little
yeah.
maybe. I mean, it feels maybe like he's there to talk about something else because
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, look, it's an agent's job to go meet with
yeah,
these people to make
yeah,
sure if I'm representing Bruno Fernandes and Saudi club wants to talk to me, I'm gonna go talk to them.
sure,
That's
why
your
not? Yeah,
job. You know, you develop contacts whether you're going to sell players, move them on or not. No doubt
yeah,
his agent will have other clients. That's what his job is. He's supposed to meet with people. He's
yep,
supposed to meet with sporting directors. He's supposed to have relationships with people.
yep,
That I own an agency, it represents people. That's your job,
yep.
like that's not everything is about making a transaction happen. And but for Bruno Fernandez, Bruno Fernandez doesn't strike me as a person who's satisfied with what he's accomplished at club level in Europe.
Mm, I don't
I
think
think if
so.
he
Yeah.
was to leave United, you're talking about a Real Madrid or something.
Yep.
Um, Ronaldo made that move at a point in his career where he'd won everything. This was to me a natural career trajectory. You know, but I think there's a reality to be faced. It's a developing league. It doesn't have the same gravitas as long established leagues have. It probably will get there at some point. They're Saudis are very committed to that. But if the reality is going to Ansley Makachkla in 2011, despite even though I had tons of money, wasn't going to cement
Yeah.
legacy. And I think Bruno Fernandes World Cup coming up next year, everything, I just would
He's
be
just staying here. Well,
going to
and
happen.
to be fair, he did an interview after one of the Europa games. I think it was with Flex over at United View and talked very openly about last summer. Barcelona and Bayern were in talks for him, and he decided to stay at United.
Mm.
I don't think turning them down to go to it just doesn't make sense in that respect. So I don't think it's anything to worry about at this point in time. I've definitely not heard anything in the slightest to indicate Bruno Fernandes has
You
any
know,
intentions of leaving right now.
James, the thing is, I've had relationships with Premier League footballers, and I've seen what friend. I'm not super close friends, but close enough. Some of the
Yeah,
people I'm talking about.
yeah,
And then when you talk to them as human beings, when they get offers to go abroad or move Manchester or whatever, and you just listen to the nuance and complexity that you don't even think about. It
yeah,
is such a huge upheaval in a human
yep,
being's life to uproot kids and
yep,
family and move some, so to us it's like a video game, trade. But to
yeah,
them, it's life, and the amount
yeah.
of
It's
stuff you
huge.
have to do is unbelievable. And I don't think Bruno Fernandes is at a point. His family's happy in Manchester. He's happy
Hmm.
there.
Yep.
I think that he made that decision last summer.
I think so as well. Yeah. I just wanted to bring it up because I think people might worry about it, but I really, really would be very surprised. I agree with you on that. So I think he made that decision
Mm,
and he wants to I think he, like Harry Maguire, would like to retire at United, quite honestly.
yeah,
That would be my opinion if they can.
I would love to see him win. A league or a European Cup at United. I mean, the guy is just phenomenal. The
Yep.
Ugarte, beautiful assist by the way. Away
Yeah.
but when Bruno Fernandes was running on goal, I had no doubt
Yeah.
whatsoever he
He's
was
gonna
going to score.
score. Yep.
I don't think I had no doubt whatsoever.
Yep.
He's- I mean, we are so lucky to have this guy.
Mm.
of how and his commitment. He never embarrassed the club off the field. He's never talked about wanting away. He's always been one of the first ones to go to the cameras when United lose and apologize. He gets what it means to the fans. I had him on podcast a while ago, but 2 years ago. Consummate gentleman, like just a
Yep.
class guy, funny. Left a birthday message for my kid, everything. Just a gentleman.
Yep.
So I would love to see him get rewarded. All right, before we split, you quick. United will be okay on Thursday.
Yeah, 3-0 at home. I mean, look, Bilbao. I just don't think Bilbao are not a scoring team. In general, they're a team that were known for their defensive. They don't really score that many goals, but I don't think United will throw it away. I can't see it at this point in time at home. Even in the worst cases of scenarios, I don't think they've ever had done something like that. Not to jinx it or anything, but just I think they'll be fine. There's a few more injuries even for Bilbao as well. Both Inaki Williams and Nico Williams, I believe, have not been training and are injured. They're two
Mm.
brothers that are essentially their best attackers. They're already without the other player in Sanchez, as well.
Yeah.
They just don't have much by way of threat. So it should be a fairly routine type of game for United in that respect.
Well, that I hope, and I am delighted we're going into this game 3-0 up. I expect United will see it through as well.
Yep.
They've never really looked in trouble against Spanish teams, which is odd. So I'm delighted that they're in a strong position. So we would be very fortunate to see our team again in another European final, and I'm confident whatever Spurs side they'll face, they'll beat, or a Bodo Glimt. I do believe that. I thought the hardest games last week. All right, mate, we'll leave it there. Thanks to all of you for downloading the pod, and we'll be back again next week. Don't forget, follow my colleague here, puts out content all the time. All right, Jamesy, see you later, mate.
See you later.